Hello, hello. With our audio. As always, we have audio problems, it seems like every week. Now, I need to just buy a new microphone. Hello, all. Welcome back to another Free Support Friday. You guys should hear me loud and clear. I'll give you guys a few minutes to get in here, make sure everything's working right. I'm also going to check my audio here, make sure nothing crazy is going on. Guess it helps if I turn on my headset. Yep. Doesn't sound like we're breaking up or anything. You guys should be able to hear me nice and clear. Again, we'll give this a couple of minutes before we kick this off. Sounds like, oh, yep, Hybrid Machining's in here once again. Hey, nice to see you. Thank you. Sounds good so far. Awesome. I am good, Travis. Thanks for coming back once again, man. I'm always happy to hear you. Dylan also. How's everybody's week been? You guys got some interesting subjects for me to cover this week? Yeah, and we're going to give this a couple minutes before we officially kick this off. Get everybody in here. I know everybody just got notified that we are live. I'm also waiting for the stats to come through. Usually takes a minute. Weekend started early, got off at noon. Travis, are you guys slow or you just work that hard, my guy? I tell you what, if you guys ever get the chance, Hybrid Machining does some wild things. They're up in Michigan and they do woodworking. And it is some of the wildest woodworking I've ever seen in custom crazy pieces. I actually got a chance to stop in and see him. Work that hard. Of course you work that hard. Your paycheck reflects that, right? Cool. In the meantime, I should be able to refresh this page. Let's see if we can get the stats in here, see how many people we got in here. Little reward. I guess it's the end of the month, right, Travis? I had that also. Yesterday was the last day of the month for me, where I had work what felt like 20 hours in 8 hours. There we go. Stats are coming through. We got 11 of you in here right now. Awesome. Great to see you guys. As always, before we kick this off, I want to put it out there that if any of you have anything you want to see specific, feel free to put something in chat. You could use the support message down below. You can also join the Discord channel or email me directly. So let's go ahead and kick this off. Welcome, everybody, to Free Support Friday with your host, Fusion Phil, over here at jitcadcam. This week, I really don't have any subjects, so hopefully you guys have subjects that we can throw at this thing until I start or have to dig into the great world of files. I see we do have some people in chat. Hi from Portugal. Awesome. Love to hear it. From that, as you guys know, you can always support this channel through liking, subscribing, sharing our content to other people that need it. Obviously, with that, we also provide you with what we call a Buy Me a Beer segment, which, as you know, I can't drink beers here live on television, but what I can do is I can drink energy drinks that are green that are getting caught by my green screen. So this week, thanks again for all of you that have bought me a beer to help support this channel. I believe you can now do super chats too. If you guys want, I don't recommend it. I would prefer you buy me a beer. It makes it much easier for me to sell the idea to my wife to drinking. And let's dive into this. So does anybody out there have anything in particular they're struggling with Fusion with, or they want to see specifically? I should probably crack open my drink too while we go ahead and wait for things to come in. I know Travis has always got something crazy he's done during the week. So we actually do got our first question. Looks like if we could speak about machine control, tilt position, or positive or negative. I assume you're talking about your rotary axis being positive or negative, or forward versus reverse, correct? I'll give you a second here. Polar milling on the mill. Oh, that will be a good one for sure. Okay, Nuno, we'll go ahead and dive into that. Let's go ahead and open up a part file to start with. Now, a lot of things have changed inside of Fusion 360. I'm actually going to grab a milling part for this. Seems to be easiest. Now, a traditional way you would go about this is we would change the post processor, but since machine definition has allowed us to do a lot of things, what I would recommend is you actually building out your machine sim or having somebody like myself do it. But what that allows you to do is to control your machine without actually having to edit your post. Now, we do have tons of videos over here at jitcadcam on how to edit your post. But for example here, I'm going to go ahead and create a machine definition. Now, based on normal kinematics, you do have the ability to set your rotary axis up right here inside of Fusion. So let's say, for example, we're working with a machine, Y, X, A, cable, Z, and then head. Now, at your actual A axis, we could rotate this out for B or C on top of that. Oh, dude, I tell you what, it's Friday, man. Yeah, I can change my screen. How's that look? You want me to start over? Let's start it over. I tell you what, guys, I have the worst luck. I need somebody to sit in the background and change my screens for me and fix my audio. Maybe one day I'll be a big enough streamer for that. So let's start that over. So as I was saying, I'm going to go ahead and go into my actual setup to my part, and I'm going to select the machine. Now, in this case, if you don't have a machine or you haven't downloaded that machine, again, you guys can reach out to me. I'm happy to help you guys and build content around this, as I've built several videos around machine simulation. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a machine definition. Now, the key element here is in the kinematics menu. I'm going to reorder some of this to set it up as if it is just a standard kind of table, fourth axis, maybe like a Fidal 4020, Haas VF series, things of that nature, right? So what we want to do is we want to organize everything. So our A axis sits on our X, on our Y. Our Z axis, of course, has the head to the machine, and so forth and so on. Now, commonly, your rotary axis is going to point a specific direction. You're dealing with an A axis, it's probably mounted on the right side of your machine. Now, for some reason, I've seen this, you actually mounted it on the left side of your machine. Well, you actually have the ability to go in and set a custom orientation. Now, what this is what we're doing is we're spinning around X, and you could say either in a clockwise or counterclockwise fashion by just simply changing that one to a negative or a positive, right? Same thing would go is on some machines, maybe you mounted your A axis to rotate around Y. Again, we can go in and we can plug in that, creating a custom controlled rotary axis with our machine. Now, if we're working with something a little more advanced than that, I would actually tell you the best thing is again, we build you a machine definition for 5-axis. But as you're going to see here, is somebody just brought this to me the other day. They're actually working with an A-B axis machine because of the way their rotary is set up. And then from that, it is still the same kind of system. So A would rotate around X, and then Y rotates around, or actually not Y, B rotates around Y, right? So again, we could set that all here in our kinematics tree. But I would recommend for all of you, make sure that if you are using a 4 and a 5-axis, we might as well get you a machine sim built. That way you can verify everything you do before you go out to your machine and make sure we limit your actual collisions. Also, make sure you turn off TCP. And in that case, you can even set your limited range on certain rotaries. So for example, a lot of people may have a rotary that can go negative 110 to 10 degrees, or so forth and so on, with actually making it so you don't rotate a full 360. So hopefully that answers your question. I'm going to go ahead and jump back into the chat, and let's see what other stuff that we have. So it looks like looking at a lathe with a sub-spindle. Can you show how that works, Travis? I'll jump to that here in a little bit. What can we show about polar machining on the mill? So, Brett, I assume you're talking about polar machining as if you have a rotary mounted in what would be the C-axis or the Z-axis orientation, and you want to spin the part and go in, say, an XC rotation versus an XY machining. Is that correct to think? We'll give you a second here to answer. Dylan, I appreciate the notes about only being able to see my face. I know you guys love this beard. I've actually debated on getting rid of the black polos and going to something that highlights my beard a little bit better. Maybe we lost Brett. Presumably, I'm going to guess Brett wants to see polar machining around the C-axis, but he may be talking about something with the A-axis. Now, if he was talking about something with the A-axis, what we would really actually need to do is start to work with rotary, contour, and rotary parallel, right? So with that, that would allow us to create our live A-axis motion for creating, whether we're doing a pocket or machining out those areas, right? Now, if we wanted to do something with C-axis polar milling, what we may have to do is, one, have a toolpath that allows for it, but two, when we post out, we need to make sure that the post may support this. Again, this is one of those things that if your post doesn't support it, we're happy to add it, but I'm going to take this Akuma post just because it's sitting here. We're going to hit edit, and as you can see up here at the top, there is no actual NC command for polar milling. Yep. So it's kind of like I thought. So C-axis on the UMC. Okay. Yep. So again, so in your case specifically, Brett, what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump over to the Haas Next Gen control, and then we're going to edit this post. And with that post, you're going to see is you have what's called use polar mode. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight use polar mode. And then we're going to go back to our actual G code, and I'm going to add a manual NC. And this needs to be an action. And then we're going to post in that use polar mode. Now, if this is something you're going to find yourself doing quite often, I would highly recommend changing and storing this as a template, right? So if I was to store this as use polar mode, in the future, if I ever need that again, all I have to do is right click on my setup, and from my setup, just create from template. And in this case, we're going to do the use polar mode. Again, I need it prior to the toolpath I plan to use it on. And from here, I'm going to go ahead and post process. Again, we need to switch out to that Haas Next Gen control. I will, in this case, I'm not using Machine Sim, guys. You should use Machine Sim, but we're going to put it on a UMC 750. And let's see what we get for G code. So as you're seeing, we have successfully posted. And in this case, you're seeing now we're doing an XC move around that part, right? So what's being forced instead of being XY, and I could repost this without the polar. Let's go in and post. We'll go ahead and swap this out to 1002 using the same settings. And now we could do our side-by-side comparison, right? So one, you're going to notice this program on the left is a mile long. Again, that's because we are using XZC for all of our moves to go around that part. Now, over here on the right, we're just doing nothing more than a G1 and a couple of G2s to create those straight lines and arcs inside of it. So as you can see, Brett, it's very possible to use polar inside of your specific machine. You just have to create the manual NC action in order to achieve that. Now, every post is a little bit different. And again, so all of you know, if you hit the little pencil next to your post to edit it, you will see what actual manual NC commands are right up here at the top that you can copy and apply to different toolpaths. So, Brett, I hope that answers your question. It looks like we got another question about 7-axis machine. I assume you're talking about a mill turn. With that, are we talking about an upper turret and a lower turret, or are you referring to just a B-axis, 5-axis kind of lathe with a sub-spindle? Again, for anybody new that's jumping in here, it seems like you guys are all hanging out. It's quite the Friday. I guess it's the first of the month, so things have probably slowed down around the shops. But if any of you have questions at any time, feel free to put them in chat here, message me on Discord directly, or go ahead and send me information directly via my support email down below. So it looks like you're talking X, Y, Z, A, and B head. Okay, so the table is V and C. So is that, so you're referring to, is that a mill turn or is that a actual mill? Because to me, that sounds like a mill. Usually you would have X, Y, Z, C axis for the main and then B axis head if it was a mill turn. It's a mill. Okay, so that looks like a 5-axis mill. If you can send me a model, machine make and model, I'm happy to look at that as well. But let's go ahead and scroll back up. I know we had a question from Travis. You guys are looking at getting a machine with a sub-spindle, and we can definitely show you how that sub-spindle is going to work. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and close this out. It looks like FTP versus. I will go ahead and Google search that on the other screen here real quick. Give me a quick minute. Ah, so it's a horizontal machine. Okay, so it is a head-head 5-axis machine, correct? that you guys can all see what I'm looking at. I'll pull this over for my other side of things. Yep. So what you're referring to then is basically you actually have two joints here. You have a joint at 45, and then I assume you have another joint here, or is it strictly just this one joint at 45? But yes, what you're seeing for any of you out there wondering is you actually have your y-axis up and down. You have your z-axis comes in and out, and then your x-axis has a tendency to be all the way over here. Oh, it is in the machine library. Awesome. So again, you have that ability inside of Fusion to run even something like this that looks overly complex, but still only works on the basis of a couple of rotary axes. Again, just a standard 5-axis machine, nothing too wild here. So I see, Scott, you do have a question there. It looks like exporting a sketch geometry to a step file. So yeah, you can't export out a sketch as a step file. You could export out a DXF as well. So again, if you wanted to export a sketch at any time, you wouldn't be able to do that as a step file, but you can definitely export sketches as a DXF at any time by right-clicking on that sketch and saying save as a DXF. Let's jump into this Sub-spindle. I saw a question about Sub-spindle. Travis, I think you missed it last week. We talked about Sub-spindle just a hair, but let's go ahead and get a part out so that we can talk Sub-spindle, what it looks like to do the grab and the retract. Now, I did get a question this week, and that question is customer was running a Mazak, and they were trying to do the Sub-spindle, but it got to a line of code and it just stopped. So that most of you know, on some of your machines that are mill turns with a Sub-spindle, you have to define the Sub-spindle offset in the controller. On most controllers, that is a B-axis offset, and you basically traditionally come in and touch it off almost as if it is a tool, so that you set a length, so then the controller knows how far to bring in that B-axis. Now, if you work with somebody like Reynolds Machines and have a smart machine, they actually run a macro that always knows that number. Again, a little different scenario and a little bit of a change of a post, and we have that ability to set that up. So let's go ahead and remove what we already have here. So far, I've got my first setup. Again, nothing fancy. We're just doing a turning or mill turn, primary spindle. My part is selected. I have a couple of toolpaths already on this part, as you all can see. So with that, we can go ahead and start to work with our Sub-spindle. Now, as always, the post does have to support the Sub-spindle, and there is tricks to that. But what you're going to see is we're going to go ahead and we're going to start by doing a Sub-spindle grab, right? So what I need to define is the ability to grab onto my part. Where do I want to grab? So as you're seeing here, this is actually being calculated from my work offset or my origin of my part in this case. And I can set that grab distance to whatever I feel necessary. Now, it is wise to make your soft jaws, of course, make sure that they are going to be able to grab wherever you're grabbing, as well as that profile. But as you can see here, is we could set our grab plane is 1 inch from model front. Now, if you wanted to make numbers a little easier to read, you may actually go based on your actual stock front, which is my stock front in my case is where my work offset is. And we are now grabbing 1 inch in. Maybe we take that a little bit further. But as you're seeing, we're just defining how far to wrap it to and then how far into our part to come in and grab onto it. Now, if you don't want to do this in a live scenario, we can turn off our spindles at any time. But as you see, the grab is relatively simple. Now, if you're somebody out there that is going to actually part this off, and I got to make this clear, is if you want to do a part off after your grab, we would then set up our part off right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up and I'm going to say turning part. We're going to go out, we're going to grab our tool here. So we have a grooving tool in this case. Guys, don't judge me on any of my tools. I use a lot of default tools. So for those of you out there like he has no speeds and feeds, don't worry, guys. I do this specifically so that you guys can pull these same tools from the library. But as you can see, my parting tool is actually starting all the way over here to the right. And this is a big no-no at the end of the day because our actual Sub-spindle 3-jaw or whatever we're using, Travis, we'll get into the Sub-spindle to offset the jaws here in a sec. But what's going to happen is it would actually come in and cause a collision right here. Fusion is smart enough to pre-stage our part-off tool before the grab. However, we need to define this as in putting it in the first toolpath point and the last toolpath point over here in our part. So as you can see here is now we're pre-staging that part off tool at the back of my part where I want to part off so that I'm already there before we come in and actually set up to do our return, right? So now we've parted off our part. We can go ahead and do our sub-spindle return in this case. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to send it back to a machine position. You can define on certain machines a machine position. Again, that may, for example, be -8 inches from your home position as well. And then from that, because we parted this off, we want to keep both of our parts clamped, right? We don't want to release what's in the headstock when we move over to our sub-spindle. So we're going to go ahead and hit OK. And that is basically it when it comes down to it. Is all you have to do is really define the grab as well as the return completely separate. So sub-spindles have an offset for its jaws. It does. Again, a lot of controllers support that. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head because it's very rare that I have to set it. But for a good example is maybe I'll go back to the big beard view, right? You have your 3 jaws, and if you don't have them aligned and they need to overlap, you would collide your main and your sub. Your controller has that ability to set an offset in the C-axis in order to control that. Travis, I hope that answers your question. If you guys want to see more about sub-spindle, feel free to let me know in chat. I'm happy to add as much as possible. And guys, I think we've hit a record high. I see 14 people in here all at once. You guys are more than welcome to send me messages, send me emails, Discord. Any questions you have, feel free to throw them up in chat. We'll go ahead and give it a couple of minutes. I know you guys are all rushing to figure out problems to play Stump the Chump or put something new in here for us to work with, right? I guess I can expand on this is now that we've done our sub-spindle return, what we do need to do is we do need to say on our second operation that we are in the secondary spindle so that when we program inside Fusion, we're actually working on the sub-spindle. We're not working on the main spindle. So from that, we could also make sure our stock is from preceding setups, making life very easy. And as you guys can see now, my stock has automatically flipped around because I have my synchronizations turned on. I highly recommend this for a lot of you. But that stock from setup 1 has now carried through to setup 2 as we're working back the other way. So I see another question come in. What do I think about the heights? I have mixed feelings about it, but the more I use it, the more I like it. I think I'm just one of those guys that for the last 8 years I've been using it, and now it's just like, you know, it's a hard habit to break to get used to, right? And again, I think we're going to see more of that transfer over possibly into the lathe side of things. It would be nice if we ever see machine sim, of course, in the lathe, that we're going to be able to see our chucks, be able to set everything from chuck heights. Again, if I go back to my simple enclosure here, and for those of you that don't know, is the heights tab was recently changed. However, a lot of the information is still the same. I do like the idea that if you're somebody that's doing 3-axis work, it's probably more of a nuisance now because you had to relearn it. But once you relearn it, it's a whole nother ballgame. But the fact that you could literally aim for a bottom height, in my opinion, of the highest of selected, and then you could say fixture top, which a lot of people overlook, that if I had this sitting in a vise, I could aim to go all the way down to where that vise is and still stay, you know, maybe 50 thou above that, right? So guys, there we go, I'm back. So it's one of those things that I think once you start to get comfortable with it, it's very, very valuable for being able to set up and do. So I see a few more questions come in. How to import a vise and or part into the machine builder to check part clearance. And is there a way to default a vise into a setup? So Brett, there's no way to default a vise into a setup, so to say, at the manufacturing level. And I do have a really good video on this where we do one part with multiple vices or multiple setups. But in this case is I actually already pretty sure, we're going to find out real quick, right? I should actually have a jig and fixture already built. Now it's been a minute since I've actually used this jig and fixture. So we may have to clean this up. So let's open this up before I bring it in and start to work with it, right? So what I've done is I've built what's called a parameter control vise. And what that parameter control vise has the ability to do, and what you're seeing me do here is I'm actually removing this dummy part out of there, is I have all of my information set inside of Fusion based on whatever I need to define or however I'm going to machine my part, right? So again, it looks like this vise has had better days, and I may need to do a little bit of fixing on this. So let's see what we have going on here. You guys are going to get to experience this in the real world scenario of me trying to troubleshoot a vise that I built a very long time ago. And let's see here. So we have our vise jaws. It looks like, oh, yep, that was probably overrode so that we could do something else with it, right? So let's leave that at 2.625, I think is the number we're going for. Again, you can see that that stock actually sits on those soft jaws. And as you're seeing, is this vise was completely brutally broken one time long ago. But as you can see, now that I have a stock here, I'm going to go ahead and remove my other stock because I don't need it. Let's go ahead and get that out of here. But as you see, we now have our actual stock. We have our vise jaws and everything set. This is where I would go to my part location and I would bring in whatever part I'm working with, right? So in this case, we're going to go back to that enclosure. I can drag in that actual part. That is going to place it now at the component level of the part. And again, this is where I could use a joint to place this. We're going to find out how badly broken this model is here in a second. And now, again, as a lot of people ask me about this, yes, I'm using a physical stock body here, or a component for stock. And the idea is that I can trigger a lot of toolpaths from this, right? So as you're going to see, I'm going to go ahead and go to my parameters page. And I think we might luck out here. So we do have stock sizes as well as a parallel height. So if we go ahead and change my stock to 2 by 3 by 4, actually we could go 2 by 3 by 3. Maybe we go 1.5. You're seeing that vise update in real time, even to the extent of how big my parallels are to raise that up, right? So as you were questioning about the height side of things, right? When I go to manufacture this, I do have this set up already on this Lovely Brothers machine because I'm pretty sure I was testing this part, this machine sim for none other than Hybrid Machining, if he's still in here. But what's going to happen is when I create my setup, again, we have that ability to go through and redefine everything. My stock is coming from my solid that we created as stock. So we don't need this one. We need the stock box. Again, my setup, XYZ position. My model is based on my parts. Now, I can go as far as setting up my fixture. Again, you have that ability to define all of this as a fixture as well that now is controllable with radial and axial clearance, right? Again, our part position, in this case, where do I want my part to sit? In this case, I could go ahead and place it on my table. I know this is a little ugly as we're moving quick. We're also backwards based on that vise. But as you can see, you can get it all in here. And then as we talked about, if I went in and did something like a 2D contour around my part, again, my lowest bottom height could actually be set to highest. And then I could say, go to fixture top and 50 thou above fixture top. So again, based off anything and everything when you're programming, we're automatically recognizing now with that new heights feature that we want to go above the fixture a certain amount. Now, if I was doing something again with a 3D roughing scenario, I actually did a video kind of talking about this last week, is we have what's called fixture avoidance, right? So again, this is very valuable when you guys are working inside of Fusion, where down here I have a radial and axial clearance, and I see Matt in the chat, not to throw Matt under the bus. I feel like Matt messaged me about this last week. But as you're seeing is I can set my radial and axial clearance to be much smaller, again, allowing that toolpath to get much closer to my fixture from a 3D toolpath standpoint, right? So again, I've seen this quite a bit where these new settings, although seem like a nuisance at first, as you're seeing programming become quicker, it's actually helping your templates out if you're a template person like me, right? So I did see a couple more questions come in. Brett, I hope that kind of answers your question. Is there's no default way to use a vice. You could put the vice in the machine sim if you wanted. I highly do not recommend that at all. Yeah, they did update it, and it was a bit confusing. I think the confusing part, and if this is just my take on it, maybe Autodesk listens to me, it's too late. But I think if we would have actually set it like two updates apart, right? Update number 1, don't make it where I have to select highest or lowest. I really did like the fact I could come in here and say model top, stock top, yada, yada, yada. I think that would have been cool. But because you now say highest, you could actually grab all 3 things as a precautionary, and then it would avoid that based on, what is the highest or what is the lowest, right? So that's, in my opinion, again, you give and take, right? Sometimes there's good, sometimes there's bad. So let's see, we got another one. Is there a way to force Fusion to use polar mode by default without putting manual NCs each time? Technically, there is ways to do that, yes, inside of your post. I would need to know more on the mill, or if that's more on the lathe side as to why you're forcing that or wanting to force that. As for a link to share with your community, what link are you looking for? I see your message there. I do see a lot more people coming and going inside of here. If you guys have any questions, like always, feel free to throw something in chat. Feel free to message me directly with the link down below. I'm here to help you guys in any way and walk through any scenarios you might have. I'm also going to go through this and fix possibly what we have going on this terrible setup here that all of you are probably wondering if I'll fix. There we go. And then we are going to do fixture attachment down here with this joint origin. We have our table attachment. There we go. Cool thing too, as you guys are putting those questions in chat, you can now preview on your machines too. Kind of a nice thing to see, are you going to over travel your machine or not? Now, this machine isn't built with limits. If this machine was built with limits and you are working with the concept of something having more or less travel than needed, you could actually see that in real time here, right? So we could put our part on the table. And what I like to say is I can now program and know when I go to the machine, where does the part need to go, right? How many times have you made that mistake where you go in and you put the part somewhere, then you go try to program it, and then you get machine over travel limits at the machine? Fusion with the right machine sim build can actually handle that for you and tell you issues before you ever get out to that actual machine. So I see Eric in chat. Hey, Eric, nice to see you once again. Looks like you're in the shop. So if you guys didn't know, Eric actually makes bagpipes. So they use some older lathes and a little Mach 3 mill, and they do woodworking, but they use Fusion over there. I got the chance to stop in and meet Eric and have dinner with him and his family, and I had a great time. That actually leaves me to believe, where should we go? Where do you think jitcadcam should go for the next road trip? So I do know I have a few things in February down in the Chicago area, but I really want to start to make our way out to the West Coast at some point. Eric, I highly appreciate that. Eric has our support package as well. He's reaching out to me from time to time. Obviously, any way we can help you guys, we're here to help. January and have to go all the way back out your way, huh? Maybe. We'll see what happens. Another trip to the East Coast. So at work, you have a Mazak lathe that does not have the ability to use polar interpolation. So what you can do, and I don't know if you've done this yet, is if you build out your machine in machine definition, so you do have the ability to do turn mill machines, but with the adding or with a y-axis or without a y-axis, we'll control that post to force one or the other. So I've had quite a few people reach out to me that just a generic spindle lathe with live tooling, and then because that machine doesn't have a y-axis, it will not actually post out those y-axis moves, as you can see here. Now, if your machine does have a y-axis, of course, you could always add that back in, You also have that main spindle versus sub-spindle type setups as well to be able to define your machine inside of Fusion and control your post and not actually have to spend the money for any of those post-processor edits. Eric, I don't know if you know this, anywhere is warmer than where I'm at in January. We get more negative temperatures in January than some places get positive temperatures. Yep. So no y-axis. So again, if you built a machine definition here, as you see with no y-axis, it will actually force all of your... There we go, and we're back. So if you build your machine without a y-axis, it will control most post-processors and not spit out y-axis moves when you're posting. So it'll put everything in XC automatically. Cool, cool. Any other questions? Anybody else have anything else? I mean, we're really hitting the ground running today. We're 35 minutes into this, and I think we've gone through 15, 20 questions. I'll give you guys a few moments to put some stuff in chat if you have any questions. As always, you do know that if you like what you see, please hit that like button down below. I don't get to see the live like button here as I'm displaying everything to you guys and working through this. But also, anytime that you can share this content, subscribe to our channel, it helps us in any way possible. And as always, you guys do have that ability. We are doing multiple live streams a week right now. So we are doing one every Wednesday as well as one every Friday. And that is the Free Support Friday mixed with Workflow Wednesday. If there's a subject you would like us to dive deeply into, feel free to leave a comment. Feel free to put something in chat. I'm happy to go and dive into anything and everything or crazy workflows you might have. That actually reminds me of a question that I got earlier today. So let's go ahead and cancel out of this. I'm going to go ahead and close this up. And let's get back to this part in particular, right? So as you guys can see here is I went in and I've set my actual machining. Now, this was kind of an interesting one. So I had a customer that didn't want to machine all the way around their part, right? Let's say, for example, I don't want to actually rough anything out on this side of my part. So what they wanted to do was they wanted to use the avoid rest machining. Now, they did a lot of work to just not machine on this side of the part. However, what we discovered was something kind of funny about the avoid machine surface settings inside of Fusion. If we're to go in and we were to set a avoid surface and pick the side of our part, is it didn't actually change their toolpath at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this up right here. I'm going to hit OK. And what you're going to notice is this toolpath basically looks identical to what we've already done, right? So it's not actually avoiding that surface. It's still machining along the surface, but it needs to be given a dimensional tolerance of how far do you want it to actually stay away, right? So this is really handy, and we'll look at a couple of scenarios here. But let's say I want to stay away from that wall by 0.1, right? So by adding 0.1 in there, what you're going to notice is we are now going to avoid that outside surface of that wall of that part. But now something to keep in mind, this is a dangerous game to play because as we're avoiding on this side over here, we will start to avoid on the inside of our part. Now, again, Autodesk, if you guys are checking out this channel in any way, shape, or form, we appreciate you for watching the videos. But when we define a void surface on certain scenarios, we may actually not want it to go to both sides of that wall. So if I was to get really crazy here and say 1 inch, what you're going to notice happen here is based on that wall of avoidance, we're probably going to get no toolpaths down there on that side of the wall. And actually, we're not getting anything inside either. So as you can see here, it might be a little tricky for some of you. Let's get the toolpath out of the way. Notice how we are staying 1 inch away from this surface on both sides of our part, right? So we're 1 inch this way and 1 inch this way inside of our part. So that avoid touch surfaces when you're dealing with close walls to pockets and things of that nature can actually cause some additional problems that some of you may not be aware of. Again, I see more and more people coming in and coming out. Feel free to put a message down in chat at any time of something you would like to see before I have to ramble on aimlessly inside of Fusion 360. Now, one thing I do like about the avoid touch machining and how it does work is if I was working on a part let's just go ahead and say I was going to do a bore on a part, right? And let's just make this 3 by 3. And we're going to extrude this out. Now, I always say that either I'm the laziest or I'm the most efficient person you will ever meet. Just ask either my wife or my boss, right? So when I machine something, again, this is a relatively simple part, nothing crazy here, is if I wanted to go in and do the bare minimum to machine this part, what you're seeing me do is I'm using 3D toolpaths, right? Let's see if we can pull one of my favorite tools, the 1/2-inch flat for all of you out there. And as you can see, we're now roughing out that part. We're leaving basically 20 everywhere and anywhere. And then if I went back and I use 3D contour, now this is where that avoid touch machining can actually come in very handy, right? So I could go in and I could say, you know what? I want to avoid this wall by 10, right? Because I'm going to come back and I'm going to cut this wall with another toolpath, but I would still like that tool to go all the way through and machine all those surfaces, right? So again, this is something that you could set up inside of Fusion. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to say selected boundary and then give this nothing and try to get a toolpath on the inside of our part. And of course, because it's a through hole, go ahead and change that into a flat bottom hole to show you what I'm trying to signify. Let's go ahead and add that. We're going to go ahead and do another extrude based on that sketch. And for the sake of this, we actually have to do two-sided here. There we go. And let's go back to our manufacture. So again, let's go ahead and regenerate everything here. We're going to go ahead and edit this. We're going to go back to our silhouette. And now you're seeing that we're actually machining inside of here. And the game plan is to still leave 10 thou material on these walls, right? So that when I come back with my final path, I can actually do my 2D contour with my wear setting and not have to really go out and cause all these additional problems and force something through, because I now have control at an individual surface level on how close that gets to everything. Second tour CNC, I see you in chat. I appreciate the thank you for the different topics. Obviously, new to CNC machining. Well, that's good. I mean, everybody's new at some point at everything they do, and I'm glad to see that you chose CNC machining. I actually have a really cheap CNC router in my garage that we did some Pinewood Derby cars on, and I've always thought to myself, maybe I should make on-machine content for the absolute beginner. You know, buy a $600 router, learn about work offsets, learn about touching off tools. With that, I'm going to open the floor back up to anybody and everybody. If anybody has any questions at any time, feel free to throw those in chat. Let's go ahead and see what you guys have. I'd love to see the problems that you've encountered throughout the week or any oddball questions that you have about Fusion and being able to use it for your manufacturing experience. So again, I'm just pulling this up so you guys can see it. We went ahead and left our 10 on our walls around this part. Based on running through our machining, we're going to go ahead and skip to the next set. And then from there, we could go through and we could do our final pass and clean up that wall. And what you're seeing is those surfaces are being removed. Again, I have my accuracy turned way down. That's why you're kind of seeing the overlapping surfaces. But that's kind of why I like the new avoid touch machining, is it's a new way to think about how you can actually set up those parts. Can we do a demo on inspection programming? I assume you're talking about Surface Inspect, right, Brian? So I'm going to go ahead and set up some inspection stuff here. But before I do so, let's go ahead and go back and just kind of fix this part in case you guys want to see the G code on this. We'll get some pretty standard numbers. And I'm just going to put this right on center. And from that, we now have that easy to use shape for the inspection. So what I'm going to set up is I have my setup here for milling already. I'm going to jump over to the inspection tab. Now, I am going to tell all of you that in order to do anything other than WCS probing, you do have to have the manufacturing extension. With that little caveat, if you're going to buy the manufacturing extension, please reach out to me. Please purchase through me. It helps this channel and it helps all of you to succeed even more. So let's go in and do our inspect surface. So what we need to do is, one, define our probe. Of course, like everything inside of Fusion, it's going to holler at you like you got to give it a tool, right? Now, the way inspect surface is going to work is we're going to place points, and where we place those points are going to generate not only our toolpath, but our inspection locations, right? So let's say, for example, I want to pull 4 points around the top. I'd like to pull also 4 points around the outside of my part. And then lastly, I can place, however many points I want inside. Let's add a 4th one to the bottom. Now, something neat about this actual path is I have the ability to always drag and place these points wherever I want them. Now, what I would say is this is a generic version of a CMM. And the reason why I say it's a generic version of a CMM is because this is not going to give us GD&T data, right? Like, this is what I like to use for first article, last article, idiot proofing, like you just pre-finished an entire mold and there's 5 thou everywhere. You go in with this probe and then it tells you there's 5 thou and you're like, okay, good thing we didn't take that out, right? So now we can set a lot of things here as well as our tolerancing on this part. And from that, what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and hit OK. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to do a traditional approach of posting out this code. You will need to use the specific post for this. So again, based on what you're doing at your machine, there is several post processors inside of Fusion. Again, what you're going to look for is the inspect surface or inspection post to make sure that that goes out and does it. Now, if you can't find one for your machine, again, guys, just reach out. But what I'm going to do is I need to cheat the system. And the reason why I need to cheat the system is because I need to actually use a random point generator built by Autodesk. Now, all of you can use this also same post where I'm going to go in and we are going to do a inspection results probing, right? So we're going to go ahead and select this. Let's just go ahead and throw it in my local library to be deleted at a later date. What is now going to happen is we are going to auto-generate points of all different sizes in all different areas. So from this, we're going to go ahead and make sure this goes to a folder we can bring it back from. Now, what is being generated is, like I said, this is what your machine is going to dump. This or something very similar to this, right? Fanuc, Fadal, all these different machines. Maybe you ever run a Shaw probe. Maybe the probe is spitting out different data. This is a point cloud of all of the data points we've created, as well as our tolerance that's in here based on our O and L. And then what is the reflective point that came back? So let's bring this back in and validate what has happened. So what we're going to do is we're going to now import our inspections. I need to select that file. So we're going to go out to our computer. Now, if you're running a Haas machine, you have that ability to actually automatically generate this and pull this back in automatically with a live connection, right? So now, again, these are random points. They are random sized points. Yes, this part is way out of spec in every way you could imagine, but what you're seeing in real time is that is our inspection data coming back where somehow we've hit 2 out of all of our points in tolerance. And I say in tolerance, but I think you're going to see some of these points are way out of tolerance, that you're probably not going to walk this back in. The nice thing is we can actually see these results in real time. So as you're seeing, we're seeing our deviation, how much we're out, the error limits, all of that data is collected. Again, this is not GD&T. It doesn't give you concentricity, right? But you could actually go out and create an inspection report off of this as well. And you could give this to your customer or whoever needs this at the end of the day. Again, providing this with your parts and setting you apart from somebody else. So let me go ahead and create that inspection report one time. Let's put it on my computer this time, which should populate in Chrome. And I'll pull this inspection report over. Again, as you guys are seeing, you now have your full data points, what's in tolerance, above, below, as well as those points. Again, don't send this to your customer. This is a terrible example. But you have that ability with your machine probe to treat it like a generic CMM and double verify that information. So give me a sec here, guys. I need to rearrange my screens again and get back to where you guys are all talking about. But I hope that actually answers your question, Brian. I mean, the inspection results are great here, as well as we could dive in further And there's also what's called a part alignment scenario too. So if you have to put a part back in for rework, you would actually use the inspect surface and create all of that information. And then we could say we want to realign our part. And what's going to happen is we're actually going to adjust our G code. We're not going to adjust the work coordinates at the machine, but this would allow us to go through and correct a deviation of what's going on. So as you're going to see me do, is we could go in, create our live point alignment. We would post for alignment. Then we would bring in our results. And then we would repost with the actual alignment code for the adjustment. So again, super neat at the end of the day that you have the ability to go out and do this stuff. We go ahead and grab that file one more time. Again, we've now brought that in. We could show our alignment deviation. Again, these are all random, but what it's telling me is how far rotated we are out. We said 5 axis, how far positionally we are out to average those points back in to get our part into place. So I see we have another comment down in the chat. Love the videos. What is the best way to learn Fusion? What do you recommend? I'm struggling with a post processor for Akuma turn mill lathe. Well, a lot of things. One, I make video content in a real world scenario. As you guys see, I like actually doing this live because you get to see me screw up and make me get all squirmy. But outside of that, we offer custom one-on-one training over here at jitcadcam. We also have a support package for your scenario, would probably cover your minor post changes, 2 hours of free training, 10 hours of support. Now, we always tell people it does say 10 hours, and that's to protect us because if you're a pain in the ass customer, knock on wood, we might have to enforce it. We rarely enforce it, right? We have people that email us almost daily. We love working with you guys. Again, is we could do training here at jitcadcam. We offer video content. I mean, I tell everybody the same, is like, go out. YouTube is the place to find all this stuff. If you have something you can't find a video on, send me information. I'm happy to make that video to help you and the community better understand the software and how you can implement it to your workflow. So is it possible to see the deviation in the machine? On some controllers, you can. However, the commissioning mode is actually set up that you're first running it so that you don't crash or cause any problems. Now, again, I've seen this on certain machines and certain ways to do this because Fusion is writing to and from your variables and your parameters in your controller. You could visually see those parameters and deviations there as well. I would recommend, though, at the end of the day, is depending on what you're doing, the live connection feature of Fusion is a great asset, especially if you're just want to chuck the part in, have it auto adjust, auto start the program after the fact, and run everything out. So I believe, Brett, you can. From my understanding, Brett's question, guys, if you can't see it there in the chat, is if you just chuck the vise in the old UMC and you wanted to rotate C, you can go in with a probe WCS. And I actually did quite a good video on this, as we can actually do angle along Y. So what you're seeing here is I can pull this straight edge here. We could do an angle along Y for our probing. Again, you could set a tolerance. You could also say is if it's out of askew by a long shot, shut down the machine, and we could actually go up and override WCSs and things of that nature. So maybe you set work offset 1 in this case to be the part perfect, but we're going to use the actual offset number 2 to be able to go through and control everything, right? So again, as you do have that angular probing feature for probe WCS to go in and pick those things up. Oh, record high, 15 people live at one time. Awesome. Love to see it, guys. If you are new to this at any time or your first time here, I am Fusion Phil here with jitcadcam. We are offering free supports on Friday, as well as we do our Workflow Wednesday videos. This last video, we actually talked about creating custom things in your toolpath to actually, at the tool operation level, control things like smoothing or add special features outside of that. Now, I did get some funny requests from a lot of you to rename stuff to whatever you want. I don't know what you guys do with your free time. That's on you. But by all means, you can start to customize more and more inside of Fusion. And like we did on Wednesday, is setting smoothing at the toolpath level is massive for a lot of you. And I say smoothing not from a tool point perspective, but machine smoothing, right? One of the requests I got is, can you change it to smooth criminal and then put yee as the high accuracy mode. I don't know what that was about, but you guys had me laugh. With that, any other questions, guys? I love to open this up to anybody and everybody. It looks like we're on a run here. We've had 82 views so far. Our record, I think we broke 100 2 weeks ago. So I think we're going to break 100 today, but we need your help at any time with more content or more things you want to see or things you're curious about inside of Fusion. That is a good question, Brian. Can you do EDM inside of Fusion? Yes. You 100% can do EDM inside of Fusion to a limit. Now, if it's a 2-axis EDM, so you're not cutting tapers, commonly what we do over at jitcadcam is we set you up with a post that would more or less use something like 2D contour in this case. And that 2D contour profile is going to create the geometry to run your EDM. And then you can control it from speeds and feeds here inside of Fusion, or depending on your machine, if you can control them at the controller because you set up certain material types and then it sets all of your information. We do it the same way inside of Fusion. Now, we've also done that where we could go in and we could do that with an actual 2D profile from the cutting side of things. Again, the idea is we're just going to spit out the G-code points, and most EDMs just require very simple G-code in a 2-axis environment. Now, if you're doing things, like I said, cutting tapers, not so much in Fusion, right? Inside of Fusion, you would actually have to switch over to another product we have called Feature CAM. Feature CAM has that ability to do things with taper and what I would call a 4 or a 5-axis kind of EDM. Next video, show us how to add a button to run a script. Well, I would assume if you're already writing your own scripts, you should know how to create a button inside of Fusion. But I will have to make note of that. Maybe I will make a video on how to make a button inside of Fusion. I've actually, I don't know, not to brag, but this last go around for the Too Tall Toby CAD tournament, if you guys haven't seen it, he was a Fusion user that won it overall, and he runs several scripts inside of Fusion, and he's created a lot of buttons inside the toolbar, right? This weekend, I'm going to dive into Fusion, and I'm going to see, can we add custom buttons at the actual tool level, right? So if we go all the way into our tool, is can we add additional buttons here inside of the tool library menu? Ah, so you're using ChatGPT to create your own scripts. That's good. I've heard a lot of people do that. You got to start publishing those on the Autodesk store so that you become rich and famous. Dang, we got more people in here. 18 viewers. Guys, if you're new to the channel, I'm Fusion Phil here at jitcadcam. We're an hour into this, and if you have any questions, feel free to put them inside of the chat at any time. You could also message me via scripts. I'm here to help you guys in any way possible with support. Oh, here we go. Good evening. I need help with my post-processor on the UMC. Awesome. In some software error, I need to add the current work offset to the first XY position line after enabling DWO. So what I would recommend is, one, we need to check what version post you're on, because that might actually have been an update. So commonly I get questions like this, guys. I'm going to give you the secret, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go out, and I have tried, but it doesn't work. All right, we may have to do a screen share for your scenario, but what I always tell people to do is to check what version post you're on, right? So if I was to go in, as you guys have seen me pull a lot of these posts in, this one's 44.145. Again, these two are basically the same post, but I've probably butchered one of them in one of these great videos. Now, from that is, with that 44.145, is we can actually verify that with the Autodesk website to see if that post is also up to date. So what I'm going to do is I am going to pull this up on my other tab as always. And if you guys wanted to, you could also get there via the tool library button, and then you could actually go download vendor library. This will take you into the libraries online, where we could move back over to the post tab. And then from here, we could check our post. So that was the next gen from Haas. And then, oh, we need to go to post, not machines. And for some reason, we're not looking at posts, we're looking at machines today. So let's go ahead and go back. Maybe there's a bug on the old Fusion website. As you're seeing, we have a lot of different machines here. Oh, they just put the machine images here. So again, you see how often I get to come to this website and look through everything. But we could also pull up the post library in another scenario. I don't know why it's not taking us to this page, but this was the page I was looking for. And again, it's still taking us back to there. So again, you can come in and you can verify the version of your post. One nice thing here is too, is if you're on a later version of the post, I always tell people to go back and look because you never know what has actually been updated. So a lot of times I see a lot of people ask questions about, you know, hey, TCP cancellation has been broken, right? Well, it's been fixed. It was fixed on 610, right? A couple months ago. So by going to the latest post, as long as you don't have a lot of major changes, can tend to remedy that problem. Let's go back over. Let me get my chat pulled back up for everybody. The error is on the machine, but not the post. But it's because the first original machine can't fix it. So it's a Haas problem. Hear that quite a bit. Is there a way to contact point? I'm going to need a little more of an explanation on that. To see contact point. Contact point as in where the tool touches the part is what you're asking? Reed, I see your question. That's a pretty good question. So a generic post processor, Reed, what controller are you using? Are you using like a GRBL controller? Are you running Mach 3? Those will actually be a good starting point for most items. You have to manually add the work offset to the line after posting. So again, a little tricky to do this live, but what I would recommend is I have videos on this out there. And what we're going to do is we're going to edit this post here and kind of give you a rundown. Is I would recommend that you open up and install the Fusion utility tool. And what that is going to allow you to do is to create what's called a debug file. And what you're seeing me do is I am forcing a debug G-code to come out of this post. And then wherever you actually wanted to place that, I always recommend to people is find where the original one is. So you actually have write WCS. And then wherever you would want to place that, again, you could actually jump down in your G-code by clicking those lines of code. And then being able to paste that in some cases will actually remedy that problem. So I usually, okay, let me jump back over here. I'm not sure it's MP CNC. Homemade 3D printed CNC. Nice. So if it runs on generic G-code, there's a couple places I could point you, like I said, Reed, is you would go off the post library inside of Fusion. Again, there is quite a few different ones out there. The Mach 3 tends to be about as generic as it gets, Mach 3 mil. As well, something like the GRBL post, very, very, very simple at the end of the day. And then you could even, if you really had to, is step up to something like the FANUC post. Now, again, is if you can't really find something, you're going to have to make changes to those posts to make them work. I know from my experience, because the machine I have down in my garage, is the GRBL post has a problem with retracting before going in and doing machining. And I had to make a few changes to that. But that's actually covered in some of my other video content. So, King Marley, I would tell you, send me a message down below using the link. I'm happy to dive into that on my end. Go ahead and put in a support ticket with us. Let me know where you want it, like what line, and then I'm happy to see what I can do on my end outside of this and get it fixed for you. Any other questions outside of that? Again, I see people coming and going. We're at 95. We're probably going to cross that 100 mark here in the next couple of minutes. In the meantime, I'm going to, let's see here. This has actually been some interesting stuff that I've had some people ask me about is, you know, should I get the manufacturing extension? And honestly, in my opinion, yes, because there's so much value in simple things. And for example, I had a customer today reach out to me and they had a part kind of like so. And let me see if I can recreate this. And then they had a hole basically right here in this face, right? Now, they wanted to go in and they wanted the ability to deburr the edge of this hole. Now, there's a lot of ways you could do it inside of Fusion. And honestly, the deburr toolpath was the easiest thing out there because all they had to do was say deburr. In this case, just give it a ball end mill. Again, we'll go to my lovely tool library. And then from that, just define that I want to use a selected edge and then pick the edge that they wanted to deburr. Again, setting how much they want to deburr, but the ability to go in very quickly and deburr your part. Now, this is going to look terrible because I didn't rough this out, guys. I get it. But the ability to go in and adjust and set that tool so that you can deburr those edges as needed. You could also use deburr now on top of that with tool orientation. So if we were to come in and say tool orientate this way, again, if we're working on a 4th axis machine, or being able to do a live 4th axis deburring as well is something very, very valuable at the end of the day. So as you can see here on our part, we're actually going to set this up based on our y-axis for tilt. And now our tool is upside down, so we'll go ahead and fix that. So your favorite, so I see Brian out there, is the modify. You like the modify, huh? The ability to trim and change all of those things inside of Fusion. Modify is pretty good. There's a lot of good inside of modify as well, right? So the ability to move your entry positions if you're worried about a seam on a part. Again, being able to get rid of paths that you don't want. Very, very handy. I mean, we kind of talked about this before when we were looking at roughing out our enclosure. If I can get to the right part here, let's get this closed out. So we were looking at doing some roughing here, and we were using that avoid machined area. Again, now it does work in some cases on most toolpaths. However, it may not work on all toolpaths, right? So this is something to keep in mind with some of this, that you may still use a traditional approach, but the ability to go in and trim a toolpath. Now, I can't trim this toolpath because it's roughing, but if we look at some of the other toolpaths, I'm going to go ahead and pull up 2D Contour. We can go in and actually delete part of this toolpath out, right? So again, the nice thing is I could do a single segment or an entire chain, but just like that, I was able to remove that area of my toolpath, right? So another one, we got Lars in the chat. You guys in the lathe questions this week. I love it. So can you do, again, we'll go back to this, but force polar coordinates? Yes, you can. All you have to do is define your machine inside of Fusion, right? So if you go in and you do your turn mill, and with that, you want to make sure you're building that without a y-axis to cause your polar milling to happen. And what that is going to allow you to do is to always force polar, right? Because without that y-axis, you can't generate xy. You can only generate xc toolpath. So again, as we went about this, I think this is what, 3rd time? Travis, you still out there? How many times? You got the tally board going? Is this the 4th time or the 3rd time? But yeah, 100%. As you're seeing here is the ability to go in and actually set that up with the machine definition for a lathe or a mill turn machine will allow you to do that. A couple other things, guys, is you're talking about delete toolpath. One of my favorite things is with trim toolpath. For example, if I had a clamp in the way of this part, the ability to go in and say, hey, there's a clamp right here in this general area, and there's a clamp here in this general area. So if you're somebody that runs like flat plate work or something, I can actually keep both parts of this toolpath, allowing me the ability to actually machine one area and then machine the other area, right? So again, is if I wanted to avoid clamps, but still come back with that same toolpath, clean up those walls, it's completely doable. So Lars, I would have to dive a little deeper into what is set up inside of your post processor, but to put you in a little better direction is based on your actual post. Let me see if I have a lathe post in here anywhere for me to tear apart live. So let's see here. Here's an Integrax post. Is inside your post processor. Let me clean up my workspace for you guys. There is several areas to set up polar as well, right? So use G0 polar. I mean, there's also the ability further down, got polar interpolation, true, so forth and so on. So again, as you can force polar coordinates, setting that all inside of your post processor. This might be another way to help you out briefly. Again, it depends on your post whether or not it's there, but by changing certain true false statements in your post on your own, again, saving you a ton of money. That way you guys can go out and you can, of course, do what? Buy me some beers. But based on those true false statements, those two could actually help out the issue that you're having and getting that set. Questions outside of that? Anybody else have any questions? Lars, let me know how that works out. So if those true false statements for you do get it changed out, if not, feel free again. Down below, there's a support email. You guys can actually send an email to that support. You can go to our support channel and actually put in a ticket. I'm happy to work with you a little bit offline on that as well. Awesome. I see, and again, we crossed the 100 view lines. Do I need the time to take a break, or do we want to keep going? You guys got more questions. I love this. This is fun. After a very long week of scratching my head and being stumped by some wild problems, which I have to say, guys, and I'm not saying this in a bad way, some of you all have found such the wrong way to do something that it comes out right. And there's one person in particular, and he's probably watching my video right now. He knows who he is. He has found every way possible to do something so far wrong that he gets the right toolpath still. Shocks me. And then we talk about it, and I'm like, wait, you spent 20 minutes doing this. It's 2 mouse clicks, and it does it itself. And then it just blows people's minds, right? Elijah, I mean, you don't have to be at your computer. If you have any other questions, feel free. So I see somebody asking about the ticket system. Let me do this here real quick. I'm going to pop open. I want to check the link down at the bottom of this chat to make sure it is the right link for you guys to use. So the link you should see actually, yep. So that support.jitcadcam. Or actually support@jitcadcam.zohodesk. Again, I will throw this in the chat for all of you guys that don't see that. Maybe I should pull up my own video, right? Should I show myself live while being live? That'll be interesting. Let's pull this over here. Y'all can see me in delay. I'm going to pause my own video before I drive myself crazy. And let's get OBS back over on my other screen, right? So as you guys can see down here at the bottom, you can go to the More section. You have this support@jitcadcam email. Feel free to go ahead and plug in that email at any time. I'm also going to try to post this in chat. Let's go ahead and copy, paste that. But also, you have access to my support if you guys wanted to log into our website. Again, our website has a support portal as well. You can create an account. And with that account, it allows you to see your tickets. You can sign up. Again, be able to create tickets. We don't have much in there for actual knowledge, as most of you know, but there is a community section for you guys to chat about as well. You could also chat directly with us via Discord. I prefer Discord personally. I know a lot of you guys are probably like me, play video games and things like that. So having a Discord channel dedicated to helping each other in any way we can, as well as any news that we have about the company we're posting inside of there. Any other questions outside of that? I know it's like drinking from a fire hose on your guys' end. A lot of you come in here. It's on next Friday. Oh, yeah? Is that a challenge? Elijah's going to bring the heat. Awesome. We love it. I know everybody in here loves it as well, because honestly, guys, if you guys don't ask these questions, you have these questions, I guarantee somebody else also has these questions, right? So is there a way to make 2D contour use multiple depths by default? So I figured at some point I was going to get some questioning on this. Is there a way to do it? Yes, right? So one is you would first toggle on multiple depths, of course. But however, you're going to notice is that you can't actually make it a user default to have it toggle, right? So what I would recommend is if you want multiple depths to be on by default, maybe we should set our toolpath so that we're actually doing multiple depths. That would make more sense to see it. But I would say get much more used to the concept of actually creating, in this case, templates, right? So you could store this as a template. And the reason why that's valuable as a template is because if it's a part of your workflow to the extent that you want it on by default, if I was to program a part like this, I could run to my templates, and then I have, for this case, 3-axis mill rough finish, right? And by copy and pasting that in there, you're seeing this in real time go through and automatically pick my toolpaths and my parts. Now, rest machining is turned on, so I would reorder this, and then we'll regenerate this toolpath. But as you're seeing, based on templates, you can add as many or as few toolpaths as you want, as well as settings, right? So one, that is a key thing that I would tell somebody to do is look at using templates. Again, you can toggle that on and it stores it at the template level, right? Another thing I think a lot of people don't realize is you actually have the ability to change this in your default. Now, this is not a recommended way to go about this, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to dump my defaults. And then what we're going to do is we're going to open these back up because obviously I love to actually put myself in a terrible spot to have to deal with this. But if we go into our Visual Studio Code, what you're going to see is you have that ability to go through all of your defaults and set your defaults. I am being a complete fibber to you because it did not dump all of my defaults. So what I am going to have to go through, actually it did. It exported just my defaults, not all of them. There is a way, like I said, is to dump all of the defaults. I got to remember how to do it because it's been a while. Same with importing your defaults, but you can go through and you can actually edit those at the CSV file format or the Visual Studio Code format and bring them back in, which would cause that checkbox to be on by default. So, yeah, I mean, Eric, it's crazy what Discord has done for the world. Again, I mean, Discord seems to be the best way I've found because you could share your screen there, you can message, there's chat rooms in there, you could actually get in video calls with each other, and it doesn't actually cost anything, which is great. Cool. In the meantime, anybody else have any questions? I see we're up to 19 total viewers here. Record high, another week, another record broke. We're over 100 views total. That's awesome. Obviously, this is getting out to the people that need it as well. All these questions getting asked is getting better and better. So, oh yeah, here we go. So going through hell because your drill bits were too long and my umbrella couldn't change tools without hitting the part. So one thing for your sake, Elijah, this is kind of cool, and I think a lot of people don't realize, depending on your machine, you can define a tool change position, right? So you could send that actual machine over to a location for a tool change. A few other things that you can do inside of Fusion is, yes, you could hard code in tool change positions, as well as we can create something for safe starting as well as a safe tool change position in Fusion, right? So again, there's a lot of different things you could do with safe retracts. We can home positions. We can actually, in this case, force XY home position on indexing. We could do a force XY position on tool changing, right? So without knowing your machine, it's hard to say what the best avenue is for you. But a lot of people we've done is we've done G53, and then we put it in an XY known location before and after a tool change. A few weeks ago, we had somebody that the umbrella sits lower than machine home, and we had to, after a tool change, get back up to height and get over to their part, right? Can we bring back mill turn Thursdays? I'll tell you this. You send me parts and send me stuff for mill turn Thursday, I'll bring it back. I would love nothing more. I'm telling you guys this. I would love nothing more than you all to buy me a bunch of beers up there and me sit here all week live on chat and talk to you guys about the different parts of Fusion and different ways we can help you out, right? OS VF1. Okay, so you're using a VF1. So is that next gen control or pre-next gen control? It's the classic. Okay, so the classic won't have it, but like I said, is we can add things to that post to force a position. And again, is one thing that will happen is as you guys are seeing inside of Fusion more and more, is we would go in and possibly edit your machine definition to put that in its home position based on that, right? So you actually, a lot of people don't realize you have machine 0 versus home position, but we could force two different locations based off what you need. And again, now we do have the ability, if you guys didn't know, we do have abilities to add buttons inside of the machine definition area. Again, my Wednesday video, we've talked about it briefly, that we could set it up at your machine definition level to have a checkbox that says move table to safe position on tool change, right? So let's run back here. I see a couple more questions come through as we're talking about. Second tour CNC, use an app for speeds and feeds because I hit a ballpark spindle horsepower calculation. So there is no spindle horsepower calculation inside of Fusion. I will say on some of those older machines, so I was talking to another guy today, Tormach 770. So that 1.5 horsepower motor, you need to get with Tormach and get what's called the torque curve of that motor, because you're going to find out that your horsepower and your torque falls off so much that there's going to be a spot that works really, really good for you. I would almost say you guys are running a router is a better way to think about it, where you can't do real heavy cuts. But I would recommend that with this is you can use tools. Again, John Saunders at MYCNC has a spreadsheet that's great to estimate what is needed. But I used to use like G-Code Wizard, and there was another one I can't remember off the top of my head, but both of those actually had the ability to give you tool specs to run based on your torque curve of your machine. So is there a better way to use high feed mill geometry to use it to get better stock for rest machining? So I assume by high feed machining, you're looking, or high feed mills, it's some of those wilder profiles that are kind of like a lens cutter type thing. So currently, as we all know, Fusion doesn't do custom tool holders the best. There's not really a great way to do it. I would have to see your specific use case. Me personally, coming from doing molds, what we used to do on a lot of those high feed mills is we would always, rough out our mold, and then we would do a pre-finish into an actual finish. And the idea is to go through and knock down a lot of the cusps and everything and just make a uniform skin based on like a 15 thou rest machining, right? 4 mil? So the bad news is again with the 4 mil is you can do a 4 mil and it is a custom profile, but it is limited on where you can use that inside of Fusion 360, right? So I did see, I think somebody just messaged me on Facebook. Let me go over and check my Facebook chat. I think they were yelling at me about a Discord link not working. Do I need to put the Discord link back in again? Oh, Discord link is not working from my video. Let's see here. Can anybody out there confirm whether or not that link is working? So I'll throw this Discord link up here again. Yeah, so definitely makes a huge difference. I can understand that. And again, it's based on the way Fusion is right now. You can't get too crazy into creating a custom cutter for that. Obviously, with time, hopefully it's going to get better. I think we've seen some pretty big improvements when you consider you can now do the lens cutters and other things inside of Fusion. But when you're dealing with something that has, that negative relief on the bottom and things of that nature, is the best way I've found you can kind of get around it is with the face mill settings, of course, but you can't actually put too crazy of a table angle on the bottom of the end. Again, who knows? Maybe Autodesk is going to watch this video and they'll reach out to us and be like, hey, can you advise us on better ways to do this, right? So, Discord link is not working. All right, let me pull up my Discord. In the meantime, anybody else have any other questions? Why I try to figure out where the share button is inside my Discord. All right, let's see if this one. Oh, that's why the link expires in 7 days. I guess if you read the instructions, try that. That one should work. We'll have to go back over to the comment down below. Yeah, you guys can get a hold of me just about any way nowadays. I mean, some of you all have my personal cell phone number. A lot of you guys have my contact information thanks to all these videos to email me directly. We'll have to go ahead and update the Discord link here. There we go. So that link will be good for another 7 days for anybody watching this. It's been more than 7 days since this video was released. As you can imagine, it will no longer be good, but again, shoot us a message at any time. So I do see that ticket come in with the Haas UMC 750. Obviously, that is a whole lot of stuff to read, and we're not going to go through that. But yes, we can do a video share, and I will be happy to help you out. Well, people joining Discord now? Of course. There we go. We got more people in Discord. Let's go. Cool. Any other questions, guys? Wow, we're up to 21 current viewers live. Let's see here. Did I miss anything in chat? All right. Yeah, again, just that custom high feed mill type stuff is just not really a strong suit inside of Fusion at the moment. Can you get my lovely helping services without buying Fusion from me? I'm happy to help out as much as I can, but as I tell everybody, is I am here to help in any way possible, but just know that anybody that is purchasing from me in some way, shape, or form obviously is going to get head of line privileges, right? I'm still happy to help you guys anytime I can when I have free time and in my downtime, which tends to be quite a bit from here and there. But as always, you guys can help in any way possible by liking this channel. Showing up to these videos helps a ton, helps get this content, helps get the algorithm going, right? So again, I'm happy to help any way I can. I mean, I'm not going to say there's a limit on help, right? But at some point, you either got to say no or you're just too busy and we'll get to it when we get to it. However, again, if you guys are all asking me the same questions, I'm going to make videos on this stuff. So let's see. All right. 3D toolpaths come across many setups in the process stock. Just messed up by itself. Way up in the tree. The toolpath is still valid, but the solid green tick goes dotted. Can you refresh that without regenerating the toolpath? I assume you're talking about in the background. So what's actually happening is if I was to go through, and let's see if I can force this with all of this stuff going on, is odds are your in-process stock is actually regenerating, right? So if we catch this quick enough, we got those circles and dots here. That is the in-process stock in the background calculating out as the toolpath goes through, right? So that's something you need to keep in mind is sometimes when you're moving fast or making changes, you make a change early in the process with all the rest machining. You have to wait for the in-process stock to also come through for anything that you're doing, right? All right, what other questions we got? Oh, man, you guys are hitting me with a bunch of them now. Let's go. Just ordered a Lang vise and accessories for over 10 grand. Could you show us how to set up a good template WCS probe thingy? I like that question. That's a good question. We'll jump back to that here in a minute. Let's run through these questions here. Yeah, so again, is with that in-process stock and rest machining, again, that is something that definitely can tie things up. So if, for example, here, if I have rest machining turned on, which I do remaining from previous, if this toolpath was to become invalid, let's go ahead and clear this toolpath. Where is it at? I always miss it. Somebody's out there yelling in their phone. But yeah, so once you clear that toolpath, it's going to be something that it's going to have that problem until it regenerates your other toolpath, right? Yeah, oh, 100%, Elijah. So don't think, yeah, I mean, if you want to give me money, by all means, you can give me money and I'll help you. Yeah, 100%. Again, a lot of my customers, they are in Fusion forever. They have that amazing $310 price. I still have that price on a seat I bought 4 years ago, and I'm keeping that bad boy till the end. And I'm a reseller. I can't even move that license over to me, right? Like, we are 100% on board with taking your money. There's zero doubt in my mind. But yeah, we're still here to help you guys regardless of if you're buying through us or if you're not. Or again, you don't have to buy me beers, guys. It's just a running joke. I always see the like buy me a coffee thing, so I thought I would do buy me the beers. Seems like you guys get a pretty good kick out of that. So what is the best way to do machining on island without defining outside boundaries? Only in your diameter form tool. I think I need a little bit more information. So you want to machine on an island without defining an outside boundary. So presumably you're going to treat something like a pocket almost is what it sounds like to me. Exactly, that's what I have. You have beers over there? Awesome. It's Friday, man. Enjoy them. No, I'm just kidding, Elijah. They send you a link to check out to do rest machining after a bigger cut with 2D adaptive. I mean, you're more than welcome to send me a link, and I'm happy to take a look at what you have going on. But if you're using something like 2D adaptive, just keep in mind at the 2D toolpath, and this is why we always advise people to go for 3D, is your rest machining in 2D is based on a very generic setting inside of Fusion, right? You have to define a tool. I would always recommend if you go in for 3D, you actually are going to be working off that in-process stock that is calculating out throughout the toolpath. Now, I think a lot of people overlook the fact that you can ignore stock less than a certain size as well. So if you have a big cutter getting into certain corners, we can actually increase or decrease this to make more of a path or less of a path for where you want to machine or where you want to machine down cusps and little step downs, right? Sounds good. I mean, are you more than okay if I pull that open here right inside of the free support Friday gig? Would I still recommend 3D on a turn mill? I assume you're talking about turn mill. You had questions before about the turn mill. Again, it's kind of one of those things that it depends on the part, right? So this flat here, would I do 3D? Probably not, right? If I was to open up another part here, the mill turn Thursday part, right? When we start to talk about something like a pattern, I think there is advantages to 3D, but I also think in this case, you know, doing something like a 2D and then taking this 2D and wrapping it around in a pattern might be a better value, right? So again, is I could just do one pocket and then do a circular pattern, set the number of instances, whatever that is. This may be quicker, again, maybe, than going in as if I was to do, you know, 3D adaptive clearing. What tool number did we use there? Tool 9. And then again, I'm going to go ahead and take this toolpath and I'm going to drag it up because, as we've talked about, the rest machining, right? There we go. And then let's regenerate that. So what you're going to see now is we're going to get a little bit of a different outcome based on how we're machining this part. And again, all we've done on this part is technically faced it off. So now because we are stock and model aware, this is a whole nother outcome. So if I was to give this toolpath, this part, a few more things, let's see here. Do we have our 2x lathe toolpaths? This is usually where I crash Fusion when I get way too far ahead of myself. So again, as you're seeing here, is we're actually going in and we're turning that, and we're roughing that OD face. Again, with adaptive clearing, who's to say it's right or wrong, right? So now I'm using 3D. Granted, we're still doing the inside area because we haven't actually done that with lathe toolpaths, but because it's actually using the calculated stock in the background, is that better than doing, 2D and then patterning it, right? Like, I don't think there's a right or wrong, and you don't need to do a pattern. We, by all means here, guys, so you know, I could have actually just went through and clicked stuff based on what I want, right? So again, is I could have went through and said, you know what? This is actually my geometry. Due to my terrible muscle memory, I'd probably do this one with 2D, and then you all hassle me in chat, right? But let's go ahead and see, did you go ahead and send over that part link, or are you going to do that at a later date? Looks like let's get back here. So I haven't seen that link come through, guys. If you have any questions at any time, I see quite a few of you here. Anybody new, just so you guys know, Fusion Phil over here at jitcadcam. We are an Autodesk reseller. We provide both support, training, and purchasing and licensing of the software here in North America. Now, that doesn't mean that we won't support you guys if you're somewhere like Australia, as I've been messaged a ton by guys over in Australia. But looks like you're going to send that link over here in 2 minutes. Are you okay with me opening that live here? I just want to make sure that there's no problems with that. I knew I was going to get the question about an internal keyway, right? So I assume you're talking about like a shaft keyway nonetheless. So how you could, looks like Nov, I might need a little bit more information than what you're asking about. From Norway. Awesome. Hey, I appreciate it, guys. You guys make this day all the better. Okay, cool. So it looks like your question about making an internal keyway slot, rectangular cutouts, basically on the inner side of a circular shaft. So are you referring to like a normal keyway square slot down? So what you would need is actually a broaching tool, or you would need to do broaching in Fusion, which I haven't made a video about this, and I've been laying low on it until somebody finally bugs me enough about it. But the easiest way that I've seen without doing a ton of stuff, and this is why I tell people, like, you do this once every so often, sometimes it's easier to hand code it, but you can do quite a bit with doing a drilling procedure and points. So instead of a selected face, you could do points and patterns, and then the ability to actually do drilling and wrap it out, because all you need is that Z and possibly X move to go in and carve out that keyway based on your machine. Now, we could, as my video from Wednesday, as I've told, is basically Matt here in the chat. Matt knows how to do broaching. He's a broaching expert. But we could add buttons inside of Fusion. Again, in the drilling area, we could add a custom button that you could checkbox, and it would say, this is broaching. Don't put out spindle speed. Only do the XZ motions, so forth and so on, right? In the meantime, I see a ton of you guys coming and going. I appreciate all of you. Record high, 130 views so far and 18 current viewers. Before anybody asks, no, this is not moonshine. Anybody else have any questions? Coming down to the wire. We got 20 minutes left waiting on this link to come through. There you go. So I think I can think right off the top of my head how Matt does that. Matt, are you doing that and then you're patterning it? Nice. So to show you guys, if you wanted a quick way to do it, as Matt is showing, is you would start out with a sketch, and then basically what you're going to do is an L profile. And then with that L profile, you can do a trace toolpath. So what I'm going to do here is we're going to actually add a second sketch to this just to make this a little bit cleaner. Oh, let's undo that sketch. We want to sketch on this plane. So if that was the inside of my bushing, yes, I don't have the square actually modeled up here. But if I go in and I say manufacture now, create my setup, as you can see, my line for broaching is put here on the X axis. Now I can go in and just like Matt said, he's doing a trace toolpath. Now, you are going to have to do some Hollywood magic on your end. I would say center line of your spindle to the tip of your broaching tool is very important. However, you're still going to only define this kind of with an end mill, right? Because once you know center line to the edge of the tool, you could set that as a tool diameter, right? So as you see here, we go through, I can now pick that edge that I want to machine down. We're going to pick it a second time to add the second leg to that. And then I now have that rapid down kind of tool path based on what I'm doing. Now with that, I have the ability to pattern, right? So again, as we could say setup, new pattern, we're going to do a linear pattern based on a direction. Again, I could use that little tail for my direction. And then from that, I could say, you know, how many do I want to do? Or what do I want to do is what is the total distance I want to go? And then divvy that up with number of step overs, right? So as you're seeing, you have that complete ability to set it up inside of Fusion. And before Matt puts it in chat, it looks like I have my direction backwards. So let's go ahead and flip direction here. So now we're going down and back to give it a relief. And then we're doing so with a pattern outboard to create those cuts, right? So again, once you post this out though, and this is where, again, we could do some Hollywood magic, but realistically speaking, once you have everything the way you want it, once you post that toolpath out, you could remove your spindle speed from that, right? So again, is we don't need to turn the spindle on. We just need to run that cycle. And there you go. That is a very easy way. And that's actually a way I've never thought of until Matt just pointed out using the trace toolpath. It's genius at the end of the day. Now, this is wrote out longhand, guys, so it's not a canned cycle. If you were looking for a canned cycle, the idea of using the drill toolpath with possibly a couple of checkboxes or a couple of variables would work great. So I did see a couple more questions come in. Yep. Cool. So it looks like that kind of answers that question for Noor. Outside of that, what else do we have here? Here, it works better. Maybe it's because it's updates. So it looks like the problem fixed itself, right? You can't surprise me with anything nowadays. In the meantime, do we have any other questions? Anybody else with curiosities? Again, I didn't think we were going to cover broaching today, but Matt Van Loo out there, good buddy of mine, just taught me something that I didn't know, which is using the actual trace toolpath works quite well. Give you guys a few moments so that you can flood the chat again with a bunch of questions. How dare it work now, right? Probably after the part's already done. Every time. Any other questions? I see a total of 19 of you guys here. 5-axis surfacing and keep the tool normal to surface. Cool. So we can definitely work with that. So let's go ahead and try to think where I am hiding something like a mold to work on. Man. So you want to keep the tool normal to surface. Normal in which way, if you don't mind me asking? Because in the case of this part, for example, I believe we have tapered walls on it. I'll have to remind myself of that. If not, we can always add taper walls. But if you wanted to keep a tool at a certain angle while you're doing certain things, it just depends on the tool path and how you set that up. But in your multi-axis tab, you do have the ability to actually define. In this case, we would want to go through and do a 2-point from point type of situation. We could also set tool axis limits, but the tool axis limits are going to be based from your machine. Now, from this, in other tool paths, if we look at something like steep and shallow, the multi-axis is actually going to change where you're going to have what's called lead and lean. And then you could set a specific angle for that. And then you can even override your tilt angle. Let's say you always want to hold at 30 degrees, and then you could force it that way as well. The bottom of the tool normal. Yep. So again, is you could actually set your lean angle, in this case, to 90. That would put the tip of the tool on the part versus the side of the tool and something of that nature. O-ring groove on a curved surface. That would be a little different where you would want to look at something more like rotary contour or rotary pocket. And the reason for that is because what's going to happen is you have your tool, but then you can change based on that tool so it is pointed at center line. So how do you add custom boxes to toolpaths? Well, Matt, you're going to have to go look at my video from Workflow Wednesday. That's how you do it. But to say the least, if you guys wanted to add custom toolpaths, I'll show you here again. But it's actually relatively simple. So take, for example, in this Haas post, if I wanted to add a toolpath, actually, I'm going to have to back myself up here, guys, because what you need is very first thing is you need to have a machine. You do need to define your machine. And as I've said in my video, you don't really need to go to the extent of machine simulation with a full build out. It does help, but we need to tie a post processor to that machine. So what I'm going to do is, as always, we're going to go ahead and butcher something here. And I tied my post to my machine. I have selected my machine, of course. And now with that being said, let's just make sure that it's not already in here. Cool, it's not. But if I wanted to add something like a custom menu inside of the toolpath, the easiest way to do so is to take something that's already inside of you. So the one that I did for an example on Wednesday was the smoothing, right? So as you can see here is I'm actually going to remove this because I did put it in here, but I forced this a different way, is you're just going to change the scope from what normally says post. In this case, we changed it to operation. When I hit save here and go back to Fusion, what you're going to notice is at the toolpath level, I now have that G1, G2, and now I have all these different options. Now, these is a pick list, so to say, based on what's going on. But now, if you wanted to just do a true false or a checkbox, what I do recommend is you find somewhere that has a true false statement. So in this case, again, I'm giving you guys a crash course here. This would take much more than this. But if you wanted to go through and create your own property, so let's say we're going to say use G10. Later on in my code, I do need to tell it what G10 is going to do. But again, this can be based on your operation. And based on that being set to operation, what you're going to see now inside of Fusion is I now have a checkbox for use G0 or whatever you're going to label it as and whatever you're going to do. I see a really good question coming in. Is Fusion able to handle a 90-degree milling head to mill a slot on an internal feature? Yes. Yes, it is. We have to flip the coordinates inside of Fusion. It does take custom post editing, but a right angle head is completely doable inside of Fusion 360. Cool. Any other questions outside of that? I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. Let's take a look here. There used to be a post, the ability to actually use one of the default Fusion posts that had it already set up. I do have a copy of it, and there is a few other copies out there, but it is completely doable to do a right angle head inside of Fusion. So based on the empty space in between, that's going to be a little tricky. So if you were trying to do like 2 ears, right, and you want to drill this one and then wrap it down and drill this one, that would be a little tricky to do in the G code because the actual toolpath isn't going to put that info out. Now, if you wanted to make something, for a different way to do deep drilling, I saw somebody bring up a very valuable point. You want to start drilling down in a pocket and retract to that point and then go back to a clearance height. You would actually have to define that with some custom buttons as you kind of saw me do, right? So you'd have to add a couple of checkboxes that then, when they are checked or when the option is selected, it manipulates the actual posted G code. Again, completely doable. I actually just had a customer 2 weeks ago ask about, E2000 in Haas. You drill a hole, you come up, drill bit spins backwards, and it throws all the curlies off, all those metal shavings or all that rat's nest. Again, they just wanted nothing more than E200. We got them set up that when they went into a drilling, they would go over here, and then it would say use E2 or E2000, and then they would check that box, and upon checking that box, it would change the drilling cycle and add the E2000. Relatively easy kind of move there. Cool, guys. Any other questions outside of that? Maybe I should go check Discord. Check the old support channel. Make sure nobody's putting in support tickets. Let's see here. Nothing important, of course. Just some junk emails. We're winding down to the last little bit. So I don't think at this moment you can. So there is a way to add extra tabs, Matt, but it's going to be much more extensive. It's going to be API development, not just manipulating the post processor. So it is to some extent. So as I always tell people, you know, once you get through the pain of learning how to program, it's relatively easy to start to program, right? But to create, you know, the extent of a UI or change the UI, you have to do the UI side. Then on the back end, you have to say what that UI is going to do, right? So it's completely doable. Again, I saw somebody earlier, they were using ChatGPT to create scripts. You may be able to get ChatGPT to do it as well. You want, we can develop certain things outside of that as well over here at jitcadcam. So yeah, 100%. So somebody was asking is when you issue an optional stop to bring the table forward or issue a command, you can actually do, instead of that, it's called a pass-through. So if you wanted to, you could do a manual NC and then a pass-through. And what this would allow you to do is you can create your own cycle, right? So M00, and then you could say, you know, G53, and in this case, I want Y to return to 0, right? So actually, we would go G53, G00, Y0, right? So that would bring my table forward. And with that pass-through put in my G code, when I post this out, so we're still on our UMC 750. And what you're going to see here in this G code is down at the bottom is we are now forcing, you know, our G53 D0 type motion, right? Where did it put it? It may not have passed through in this, which we could add at any time. As well, the pattern might be throwing it off, or yours truly just needs to post out brand new code. We get down here to the bottom, there's that pass-through command that I've made. So there's an actual program stop versus option stop. Now, again, I could put the M0 or M01 after this command so the table comes forward, right? So some posts don't have pass-through, but the great thing is it's actually really easy to add pass-through to your post. And I could show it to you. There's a really good article on this, but all you really need, and again, go out to the Haas Next Generation post, is this block of code right here. That's it. That is the on pass-through functionality, and then you would place that in your post. So as you can see, is there's a lot of areas here for functions and things of that nature. You could just find force modals or pending radius compensation, copy and paste this in, and now you have pass-through commands. So a right angle head inside of Fusion, is it easy to program inside of Fusion? Technically, yes, because you're just going to do it as tool orientation. Now, keep in mind, Fusion's machine sim really doesn't have the ability to simulate a right angle head. We can build a specific right angle head only. And because what you're going to need to know is basically a gauge line or distance to center to the right angle from your actual gauge length or your gauge flange. Again, these are all things that we put into the post processor when doing that. But to say the least, all we're doing is flipping the coordinates. So if you were to come in on X, right? So you're going to come down in Z and in on X, your Z-axis and tool orientation is just being output as X, right? So the same with, you know, you're going to go, what would normally be XZ circle, it will be XY in Fusion and then put out as XZ. So we're just flipping your coordinates based on that. Cool, guys. Any other questions? I know we're getting down last 6 minutes. I think we're setting a new record. 2 more views and we break 150. I see 18 of you guys. So we've been in the high teens all day. So, I mean, this is letting me know that you guys actually thoroughly enjoy this content, and this is extremely helpful for you. So we got another question. Is it possible, like in some CAM use, suppress operations only for G-code? So you can suppress operations or set them to optional inside of Fusion, but I would need to know more about what you're trying to suppress, right? So what I tell people is, like, you could add an optional cycle, which meaning when you turn on block skip or turn off block skip, it will actually run that cycle. This is extremely handy if you're going to do anything with probing, right? Maybe you don't want to probe every part. I want to probe every couple. Well, I could go over, hit block skip. Now it probes this one, and then it skips the next one, right? Yeah, so again, another question here is sometimes when you're machining around a part, you may have round corners in a square block where there's going to be islands and pieces of material that you know are going to fall off or ricochet around your machine. Fusion will see that as a collision because it is thinking that that material is still there. There's really not a good way to avoid that. Now, it really comes down to the use case, right? What I've done in the past is I've generated like a 2D contour to knock that stuff off. And then again is by turning on optional and running my block skip, I can just skip over that operation at the machine. Or when you post your G code, I could skip said operation, right? So now I could just post out these 4 toolpaths and maybe skip that ghost toolpath or that fake toolpath in the background. Good news, guys. We just hit 150 viewers. Thank you, all of you, for coming out and enjoying this. I'm going to keep this going here as long as you guys keep the questions coming in. But as always, I do have to do my part, which is this dang microphone. I keep bumping it. The cable is shot on this thing. As always, guys, we do live content now on Wednesdays and Fridays. And from what I'm being told in chat, you guys want turn mill stuff. So I will be bringing back some Mill Turn Thursday items, but you need to send me content to make videos on. I need to see the scenarios and the situations you guys have and the questions you have to really help out with anything and everything. But if you do like this content or you want to give me information on content you want to see, please leave a comment down below. Please hit like on this video as well as subscribe to our channel. And as always, if you guys want to, you don't have to, you can buy me a beer up there in the corner. There's a link down below because my wife can't say no to a beer that you bought me, which makes my life much better. Let's see if we got any more questions coming in. So I do see, or I could save NC programs with only programs I need. Yeah, 100%. So you could just post out the certain areas that you wanted, right? Eric's saying that you need more. Oh, there's only 7 likes on this video? Man, 150 views and 7 likes. That tells you something. I miss the good old days of the downvotes. Now only I get to see the downvotes, which is very rarely do I get to see thumbs downs. Let's see here. Oh, looks like we're up to 20. You might have to refresh your page, Eric. Oh, nope. Yep, 14 likes. Yep, 14. Uh-oh. There we go. Good old OBS. Awesome. Anybody else have any other questions? Any questions at all? Hey, we appreciate you being here. Got to pad them stats for viewer time. Trying to get up to that point where YouTube starts to pay me for these videos. We are at the 3 o'clock mark. If I don't see, you guys always do this to me. I'm going to start my outro. You guys don't have to stay for it. But every time I start to do my outro, y'all want to ask me questions, right? So here we go. As we know, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And you all know me, Fusion Phil over here at jitcadcam. We are here every Friday as well as content on Wednesday and what's soon to be probably Thursdays as well. If you guys have any questions or have any problems, feel free to use the information down below to reach out to us directly. And with that, you guys all have a great rest of your weekend. Hold on here. All right, that's just a suggestion. We will make a video with an internal keyway slot by all means. But you guys all have a great rest of your weekend. And obviously, we will see you all on Wednesday for our next live session. With that, see you guys on Wednesday.